I'm Jeff Eichler.
And I'm Kirsten Rickert, and we are the hosts of the Getting Unstuck podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 169 of the House of EdTech, we have a great interview with Katie McNamara, a different way to use a fan-favorite EdTech tool, plus a second recommendation for a tool you may be surprised you haven't used in a while. And we have an awesome House of EdTech VIP. Strike up the band.
Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nesi. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn.
Welcome to episode 169. Hope y'all enjoyed the last episode, episode 168, with Chris returning to share an excellent professional development session he hosted for his district. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, make sure to do it soon, because Chris shared 20 to 25 strategies to help with remote learning. But really, most of these strategies should be used even when you're face-to-face. Guys, I'm happy to be back for my final solo hosting episode of the House of EdTech. It's a bittersweet episode because I've really enjoyed my time in the power seat, as Chris calls it. It's been a privilege and a great opportunity, and I'm thankful Chris allowed me to take part in the House of EdTech while he's been out on personal leave. Again, I'm your substitute host, Derek Larson, at Lars3EB Online. Thanks again to everyone for your kind words and feedback on the last couple of episodes. If you want to leave feedback on this episode or any episode, feel free to contact me directly online at Lars3EB or by visiting chrisnessy.com/feedback. Folks, we have a great show today with an awesome interview, multiple EdTech recommendations, and an incredible VIP. So let's get right into the featured content. Okay, this week we have an amazing guest. We have my good friend, Katie McNamara. She is a librarian out of California. Katie, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit of information about what you do in education.
Yeah, hi, Derek. Thanks so much for having me. So I serve as a high school teacher librarian in Central California. I'm also director of the Teacher Librarian Credentialing Program at Fresno Pacific University. And that's just not quite enough because librarians, they like all the things. So I'm also serving as California School Library Association president.
Like you said, that's not just one little tiny thing. That's a lot of big pieces and a lot of big things going on there. We could probably unpack every piece of that. But one of those I want to hit, I wasn't even aware of. Yeah, we were talking beforehand. We almost should have recorded them, but we're going to go here now. You mentioned that you're on the board for certification for California librarians. Tell me about that a little bit.
Okay, so I'm a director of a program at Fresno Pacific University. So in California, teacher librarians or certificated librarians, depending on your state, and they have to have an additional credential to serve as a teacher librarian. So we have a program at Fresno Pacific that helps them just totally rock that role where all of our courses and all of the tasks are directly school related. So not to dishonor a public librarian, love my public librarians, but rocking the school library is a bit different with all the extra collaboration and professional development aspect that has to happen as well.
So you're working, in a sense, you're basically doing like what the pre-education people are doing as they're getting certified to become a teacher. You're on that end, but for the librarian end. Is that, am I understanding that properly?
Yes, that's right. So my candidates, they already have a teaching credential. They've already been teaching. Maybe it was science or Spanish. A lot come from English land, but they've already been teaching, and now they're taking this extra leap into the school library.
That sounds really similar to Utah. I know here in Utah, in order to be a secondary school librarian, you have to have a teaching credential somewhere, anywhere K-12, and then you have to go back and get your librarian certificate. And so that's some additional. Sounds very similar to what you've got going on your end. And so I'm actually finishing up my credentialing right now as we speak. I've got one more class coming up in the spring, and then I will be done and fully certified. The keys will be fully in my hand. No more provisional stuff. So
congratulations.
I'm pretty excited. It's been a long time coming. My wife is excited for me. I think she's more excited for me to be done than I am to be done. So it'll be a good time. Good things, definitely. So you also mentioned that you're the president of the California School Library Association, or CSLA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh, this is definitely a time where if 2020 vision was like possible, like there would be no way I would have put my hat in to be president during 2020. Like absolutely not. But, librarians, we just roll with it. So with COVID, a lot of needs came up, and luckily with my experience in teaching, I was able to be really responsive and provide just like on the fly professional development for our librarians. And we opened it up to not just members of CSLA, but anyone who wanted that little extra bit to come and get some assistance of how do you still do this through distance learning? Because it's one thing to teach face-to-face, and it doesn't just carte blanche transfer to that digital atmosphere. And sometimes there's just, maybe you do know how to do it, but there's fear or uncertainty. And so just having a safe space where you can talk it out with other people in your same environment is really helpful. So I connected as well with our Department of Ed to help get the word out so that more people could get just plugged in that wanted it.
Is the CSLA, I'm assuming now California is very large compared to other states and how they have things run. So is that CSLA, is that for the entire state, or is it just a certain regional area of California?
It's the entire state.
Wow. So that is a massive organization, I'm assuming. Is it entirely volunteer based, or is there anybody on the team there that's their job?
Our board is completely volunteer. Thank goodness we do have an administrative assistant that does get paid as well, but all of the board members are just serving out of their heart.
Wow. Yeah, I served a number of years on the USET board, the Utah Coalition for Educational Technology, the ISTE affiliate for Utah. So I served on that board for a number of years, and the whole board, everyone was entirely volunteer basis, but we did have a couple of roles that received a small stipend, the webmaster, but that was it. But it was just a stipend. We were all just teachers teaching within the state. And so it's really interesting. So it sounds like it's very similar. I feel where you're coming from. A good friend of mine is currently the president of USET this year, and he's had very similar comments that he's like, man, if I had known, I would not have run when I ran. I would have waited another year or two.
Right. As if COVID wasn't enough. We had, the BLM movement happen. We also had the massive scare with budget. So it was just like this trifecta of things that needed to be dealt with. None of those things were something that you can just like, turn your head to and not deal with. No, each of those needed its own time and space, and we're still dealing with them and still like honoring the shifts that were brought to everyone's attention of what is needed.
Well, and then also I feel like every year your poor state is like constantly burning, and like that's a major concern just in general, but specifically for libraries, because in libraries a good chunk of what we have in our inventory are these dead tree items that burn very, very easily. And so has that been any kind of a concern for you and your district, or any libraries, school libraries within your area?
So the one good thing about where I'm at is we never get on fire. We just get the smoke. So I feel I can't really complain about that, as I have, my friends in the South or in the North evacuating. And so I always put the call out, hey, I don't have much space, but you're welcome to my floor. Pets, that's fine. We'll figure it out. like, no one's taking me up on it yet. I know it gets a little awkward, but that's just my position. But fortunately, I also serve, well, not fortunate that I also serve, but I'm fortunate to have Q and their outreach as well. So I work with them as Information and Media Literacy Network Chair and my local current Q affiliate. And when we've had years of really bad fires and whatnot, they have also helped us fundraise. Shout out to Mackin. They also had done major fundraising efforts to completely replace some libraries that lost everything in the fires. So the community really does come together, but it is different when, we lose a classroom versus losing a library, because losing a library is hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah. And it affects every student in the building on some level, because classrooms, I mean, that's 20, 30, 40 kids. If you're in elementary, whatever, and 150 if you're secondary, of those small group of students. But if you're in there with a library, that's the whole building. And that could be hundreds or thousands of students. So yeah, definitely terrible thing. So sad. So talk to me. So let's get into this a little bit more. I love the background. I love the fact that you're all over the place, for good or for bad, right?
It's the same message. Like, honestly, I serve on another board too, but I'm still always just fighting that, not like fighting, but my focus is on media and information literacy and how can we best empower teachers and students. And so that same drive that I have to empower, like, it transfers no matter what organization I'm working with. If I have a conversation with, our state librarian, it's hitting that as well.
And that's exactly what we should be doing anyways, right? We should always be trying to fight for the underdog and the students that need it, those people who need it. So what a great opportunity for you to constantly kind of be working and making sure that you're in there and working with your communities, regardless of the focus. So that's incredible. With all of this being said, you didn't start your educational career as a librarian. You came into that partway through. So tell me a little bit about your pre-library days, and then kind of when that transition happened and why you transitioned to library.
Hey, my pre-library days are basically secondary in English land. And I really, really like 8th grade, and I really, really like 9th grade. But in my area, the districts, they separate at 8th grade, so you can keep bouncing back and forth. So I've landed at high school and served in that aspect for about 16 years. Off and on, I would do academic coach things, and I really liked it, but I was missing my kiddos. And so I went back to the classroom to work with them. And I was in a situation where I had a really toxic principal. And so I just put in for everything I felt I was remotely qualified for to transfer. And there were tons of English hirings and a teacher librarian position. And so I put in for all of that. My husband's like, just dad. He's like, you got to get out of that place. You've tried and tried. It's time to just, move on. So my first interview was for the teacher librarian position. I was kind of upset because I wanted to get a chance to fill everything out with the different administration, the different schools. Well, before I had driven all the way home, and this was before there was the big law with the talking on the cell phone, the interviewing principal called me and told me I had the job. And I didn't know to accept it or not, because wait a minute, I want to wait until the rest of my interviews are done, and then I'll get to pick which one I select. And my husband is put a dagger through my heart. He's like, well, Katie, what if no one else offers you a job? It's like, what? No, that's not even remotely possible. Yeah, so I accepted the position, and it was the best choice ever, because I'm still doing all of the gig that I love from being an academic coach, and still getting the bits that I like with being a classroom teacher, having those connections and being really close to the students and being able to be side by side with my teachers. So it is the best job on any campus.
I have to agree. I mean, I came from a background of teaching. I taught elementary, 4th and 5th grades. And then I went out and was at a regional service center. And as I came back to a single district, working with multiple districts, and I came back to a library. And I never would have thought that's where I would have ended up. But honestly, I agree with you. I think it probably is one of the best gigs you can get. When I was early on in my career, our district technology director at one point had told me, he said, honestly, the best place you can be in any school is the library. Find a good library with a principal who you can really work with, and just lay low and stay out of the drama, work with the teachers, make some good stuff happen. And just, you're going to see some amazing things going on. And I thought, okay, whatever, sounds fine. But honestly, having now been here, this is year 3, and I'm going to agree with you. I think it probably is. It's a great place to be. They're hard in my district. They're hard positions to get into because people love them so much. They don't ever leave unless they retire. And so we'll go years and years without any openings. And so I was lucky to sneak in when I did, but I love that background, the fact that you kind of came into it through different manners, but yet you're still doing a lot of the same things. Talk to me about, pre-COVID, what was your day typically like in the library?
So my day would be, okay, well, my role is a little interesting. I also teach library science on top of it. So I have my library open for the kiddos, their basic needs. Sometimes they just need another book because they finish it and it's the end of the world. They don't have another book. Yes, I'll take care of you. Sometimes it's students that just need extra help on something. I've got a few that will come in because they're ahead in their class. So the teacher will send them over to me and I'll get them on an enrichment activity or something else for them. So I have those little side-by-side things occurring. And then my library science students, I'm basically running a flipped classroom model during class time because they've got to be self-sufficient, basically. I'm still, their teacher and I'll still help them, but my focus is on the class that I am teaching for the visiting teacher. In my situation, I don't have a library assistant, unfortunately. It's me by myself with 2,000 students at my school population. So the classes usually come to the library and I'll do a lesson there. Sometimes I'm juggling 2 classes at once, which is interesting because I'll go ahead and get one started and then they're doing some independent work and I run across the space to the other side and get them going and bounce back and forth. Those are crazy days, but I've got to be able to cycle through my classes as much as possible. Sometimes, I don't have anyone that comes in as a whole class, and that's a day that's needed too, because there's all kinds of things behind the scenes that have to happen to manage the library. Or when I'm doing those lessons, it's not something I'm just pulled out of a can on the shelf and I'm replaying something I did 5 years ago. That lesson is unique for that teacher and that standard and those kids at that moment. And the scary fun thing about a librarian is you have to help with every subject. So even stuff you don't know about, you have to become an expert of sorts really, really fast to throw this lesson together, which also needs to have aspects of, really good pedagogy. So when you're doing a class, you're also showing what good instruction looks like, having your transitions, different ways that you're getting the kids to engage and just increase their interest.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. Honestly, I'm thinking back to, some of the stuff that I've done and I've been doing, and he hit the nail on the head. I guess my question though is, you don't have any library assistants or library adult aides that are there with you, or you're literally by yourself?
I am literally by myself. So my library science kiddos, I have about 4 to 5 a period. And before I even open the library, I train them completely on circulation and finding the books so that they can basically run circulation on their own. So in a sense, they're working in aspects like an adult aide would, but it's still a really narrow field of what they can do. So they're running that. Plus it's a college prep course. So they have these meaningful assignments that are helping them dig into how to promote library or different activities that help engagement, learning about freedom to read rights.
So you have help in the sense that you train your students, but they're also students first, and then they kind of help as well on the side, right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. So then like passing period is like horrible because I'm like by myself. And anyone that's been in a library, passing period, you get tons of kids. They're like, I have questions, last minute emergencies.
Oh yeah. And so you're saying that one of the ways, so that was pre-COVID, where you'd have classes, whole classes would come in from teachers, they'd send them down for different things, and you'd work through different ideas with them on top of the students that were actually assigned to you as the teacher. So you could have multiple classes, like I said, 1 or 2 at a time, plus your kids that are your students. That's a happening place to be, lady.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to clarify, because you said they would send them to me. I don't let that happen. I know sometimes it works as a teacher prep, but the teacher comes with their class to me, because a lot of times what I'm covering too, it's information that's new to the teacher, or it's a strategy that's new to the teacher. So it's just as valuable for that instructor to be there and see what's happening. So it's like some extra personalized professional development, doing that model lesson for the teacher.
That's awesome. Well, and frankly, that's a great tip for any teachers who are listening, that they're thinking, okay, yeah, I my kids go to the library and they do this, and they go on their own, they drop them off. I think that's something that's really important for people to realize, as a way that you can work with your librarian. Don't just use librarians as a babysitter. Come in and engage with what's going on. Even if they're not necessarily requiring it, you ought to, maybe you ought to step up and do that. Come in and see, because as you're saying, there's things that are being covered that may be new to the teacher, or it's another option, another ability to see someone else teaching and kind of get some of those kind of things, those ideas in mind. So that right there, that's quite the nugget for any teacher to grab and take and go, yes, that's perfect.
Definitely. If there's a new concept that you want happening at your school, this is the best way to do it. So I'll go to a teacher and be like, hey, I had this idea. Can I use your class, please? Knowing it's going to be amazing and the teacher's going to want to keep doing it. So for instance, running a breakout EDU or incorporating book snaps, that was totally how I did it. Like, hey, let's do this and come see what happens. And still following the good model of what shoulder-to-shoulder support looks like after the lesson, whether it's like that right after the period or at the end of the day. I always go back to that teacher and we debrief and talk about how the lesson went, even from my side. What did I do well? How should I change it? But always hitting the engagement of the students. So what do you think about how the students responded to this? And it's just an amazing conversation. I've never had a moment where the teacher was like, oh my gosh, that was totally horrible. I will never do that again.
That's amazing. Honestly, I think that's so important. That's so crucial, is that we have to realize that school librarians can do so much more than just check out books and just help kids find books. And it's more than just doing a read aloud. Like, there's so much more that we can be doing, and collaborating with our teachers to really kind of work that. That's a great tip, because there's hopefully not every librarian has all the same skill set, obviously, just like not every teacher has a skill set, but there's so much that we can do when we're working together, and we truly can, as that hashtag is hashtag be better together. I think that's so important that the collaboration can work between, because as you said, you might collaborate with every single different teacher in your building, and you're not fully trained and certified in every academic area. But yet, that's one of the things that as librarians, I think we do have some of those skill sets to say, okay, how do I kind of wrap this in? And we're almost like coaches, if you will, I think is the way I see it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when people are like, well, what do you really do? I said, well, I'm an academic coach for every single subject. Plus, I'm technology integration specialist, instruction specialist. Oh, and I get to run a library on the side.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so let me ask you, is your title in your school librarian? Or what is your title that they have for you at your school?
So teacher librarian.
Teacher librarian, okay, because that's something that's really big in the space as well. Because people say, okay, well, I'm a media specialist, or I'm a teacher librarian, I'm a librarian, and all these different terms, makerspace directors. I mean, I've seen all kinds of things coming out of this, and it's like, okay, we got to make sure where is it all hitting, and the title, I think, sometimes can help also people to realize, okay, what is it you do more than just A, B, or C? How can I work with you, and making sure that they recognize that. So tell me about, with COVID has hit, as of March, everything kind of went crazy and got turned upside down. How has COVID affected how you work with the teachers and the students in your building?
So it's still all kinds of crazy. I am still like number one support for my teachers and students. Literacy still matters. Everything's just going a lot slower. So the one, I don't really want to say positive. A pandemic's not positive, but one thing that distance learning has done for me is I'm not juggling 3 classes at once. Just the nature of being in a Zoom or a Google Meet, you can't run all over the place like that. So it's allowed me to focus and really be in the moment with the class I'm teaching. As pre-COVID, I could be teaching a class, some kid comes in and needs this, or the principal comes in and needs that, the phone rings and something else is needed, and I'm like having to like run back and forth like a crazy person. So not that I'm like not crazy, but I'm not having to do the same extent of the juggle. What has shifted a lot though is the level of collaboration. So teachers are just so overwhelmed. There's degrees on digital instruction. And overnight, all of our teachers were asked to become these digital instructional experts without much assistance and sometimes no assistance. So when I'm working with a teacher, typically we would have like multiple meetups and I would do stuff and check in and show them and they would do something. We'd collaborate during the process before I did a lesson. Well, now it's kind of like, I have this going on and I don't know how to do it. Like, okay, what day do you want it? And then I show up with the lesson and the topic of what the teacher needed. So we're still collaborating, but you don't have those hallway conversations and there just isn't the time, or if there is the time, they're already just so overwhelmed. So this is one thing I'm kind of taking off their plates.
And it's like you have to plan for it more ahead, like you said. You have to, okay, we can chat about it at this time or here. And that's one of the hard things I think with the distance is you're not able to just pop down the hall and say, hey, I need to borrow your class. Can I work with your class for this? When will that work? You have to really kind of get in there and kind of plan that out, which maybe is a good thing. Sometimes that's great for people, but I think some people tend to be, the spontaneity is a powerful tool and not having that. But like you said, I think it's enabled you to focus more on a single class and not have to be so split personality while you're working with any one class.
Right. And so another big change is scheduling. So I would run a fixed and flexible schedule simultaneously, and I would schedule like a semester at a time. So maybe I didn't have planned what I was doing with a particular teacher, but we had a slot kind of already saved for them. Now, I schedule out about 2 weeks because that's just where everyone is at.
About as far as you can go. You can't go much further than that.
No.
Whereas in the classroom, people feel comfortable. They kind of feel know what they're doing. But now, like you said, everything's flipped upside down. We're all having to kind of work and maneuver this and work our way through it. So that's interesting that you've had to kind of shift to that 2-week blocks. Do you feel like you're still getting in and able to work with classes as effectively, or do you feel like your lessons are unfortunately not quite as up to par as they would have been that face-to-face? How's that panning out?
Okay, so I am an overachiever with ADHD. I think my lessons are pretty amazing, but I get bored really, really easily. And I'm one of those people, school's not easy for me. And that always throws off people when I tell them that. But you have this degree and that degree. I'm like, yeah, because I like food at my house. I'm going to go to school. But it doesn't mean poof, it's easy. But I have the perseverance. But I also don't want to persevere through drudgery. And I really think about that when I'm doing a lesson for kids. I'm intentional that the lessons are really engaging and interactive. And so the neat thing about that is I'm thinking about all of those things. And some of my teachers aren't able to get there yet because they're just slammed every day with these different things they have to do. And the way they're having to report engagement right now sucks up so much of their time. So I get a few days to work on this lesson that's going to have a kiddo do breakout room conversation, then go to brain dump in Jamboard. Then we're going to come back and do this. Maybe we're doing something in Pear Deck and we're doing all of these different things, but getting across what the base learning had to be. So they're almost like accidentally learning because they were having fun and they didn't quite realize what was happening to them. But that was my evil plan.
That's always great when you can find a way to really kind of get in there and help them to see, yep, you thought we were just playing around, but you actually gained a bunch of knowledge that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, the other week I went to a classroom with a picture of a squirrel and a woodpecker playing chess. I really had no idea what was coming, but yeah, we did a lot of learning.
I bet. Yeah, that sounds quite interesting. I'm sure you've got some good tie-ins there, something happening. What would you recommend to a teacher who is in the middle of this crazy COVID time, whether they're fully distanced or whether they're back a hybrid and partially in the building or even in the building full time? How would you recommend they approach their librarian at their building to find some time to collaborate or to start a collaboration if they've never done that before? What would you recommend a teacher do to start that process?
So sometimes a teacher has no idea. They can go ask their librarian, and that breaks my heart because it really should be the other way around. That librarian should be going out and communicating individually with all the teachers as much as they possibly can. If it has to be an email because you can't get to everyone, fine, but the staff should know that they can come to the librarian. So for a teacher to make the first step, I always advise, hey, if there's something that's coming up that you need to teach but you're not sure how, come to me. If there's something that you have to teach that you're not excited about teaching, come to me. If you heard in Facebook or the Twitterverse, some new concept, but you have no idea how to do it, come to me. So I really want them to embrace these new ideas they might have and feel that they can still do it. That just because it's new doesn't mean, oh, well, I can't do it because I don't have time. So I'm just going to pull off my binder, my March binder, because it's March, and I'm going to turn to this page and do yada, yada. I think when you're trying to do something new, going to your librarian is magical. And it really depends on your individual school or district. They're all different. Some teachers, they have a wonderful PLC and they just feed off of each other and doing all of these things. Then you have some people that are in a PLC and they're the one that's wanting to do everything different and they feel lonely. Well, those are the people that really, really need to embrace their librarian, and we can be crazy together.
That's a great point. I think the first step is just going in and not being afraid to say, hey, would you be willing to help me? And really, I agree with you. I would hope that the librarian is making that initial piece. And so if there are any librarians listening and that's not something that you're doing, you probably should start that. That would be a great thing to do. And if you're not comfortable with great big things, just go and get that communication started, right? And then ideally, the more that you feel comfortable with your teachers and they feel comfortable with you, hopefully the more likely they're going to come in and chat with you and get those nuggets started, those opportunities. But if you're a teacher and your librarian doesn't do that, don't be afraid to go in and ask. I mean, back when I was teaching in the elementary school, I would regularly go in and just say, hey, I'm teaching this topic. What do you got? What do you got for me? Is it like books, movies? What do I have available here? I worked with two different librarians as a teacher. They were both great in different ways. Neither one of them were very much jump on and teach and get into the real thick collaboration, but they both were able to help me find things that helped me. We would always do book reports, book projects every month, every other month. And so we got to the point where the librarian would ask, so what is your genre coming up next? And we tell her, well, in October, it's mysteries. And so the end of September, she'd start pulling all the mysteries and make a little mini collection of sorts. So they're right there available for all the fourth graders coming in to just know, here's a bunch of mystery books, you guys. I heard you're going to be reading mysteries next month. Here's some options if you need, and just kind of small little things that may not be necessarily collaborative in teaching, but can be collaborative as a support. And so I think that's also something important to realize, that if your librarian is not really a get out there and teach kind of a person, they probably still have access to a lot of resources and a lot of support materials that can help you and your students without even having to necessarily come right in and teach if that's not their thing.
And that's a big time saver too. So sometimes it's just daunting collecting resources, or maybe you need current articles on a given topic. Well, that's your librarian's job, to support you and curate information for you. So yes, go ahead and tap them.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. So let me ask you, how can librarians support their schools outside of COVID when this whole thing ends and we get to come back into buildings more full time? Do you think that role of the librarian is going to have been changed? And how can that support happen?
It's a great question. And I think it's different based on where you're at, or even like you just mentioned, librarians are different. So some that have been in the library for 20 years, they're not doing things like I am. And that's okay. Some are, but just different times for what you went to school, what you learned, what you're expecting is completely different. When I go back, I'm not going to have any differences as far as how I'm supporting my teachers. I'm going to get to see more kids face to face and chill out with them and like play chess with them on my lunch break. That's going to be amazing again. Oh, and coloring, I like color space work because, you got to be able to like chill when the AP class gets too high, too much stress on them.
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah, and that's really not like a funny questions, but it's been like interesting. Like, hey, so are you still able to do your job with COVID? Like, yes, I'm actually working more than I have before. I feel like just there's no like end of my day. But being that support to your teachers and your students, that's the same with COVID, without COVID.
Yeah, it's really got to pick up, and we've really got to realize that it's a whole team effort. And regardless of what your role is in education, we should all be working for that same purpose of helping right now specifically, and even after, and we should have been before, helping to make sure that our students are getting the best educational opportunities out there and making sure that it's really working for them the best we can.
What COVID has been helpful for is administration that didn't realize what their librarians were doing. This has been an eye-opener. There's so many instances that I'm hearing of, and even in my own district as well. Like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. Or, oh, thank you so much that you were able to help this teacher with yada, yada. And I'm like, I was doing that before, but like, yes, this is what I do. This is part of my job. I've gotten a lot of emails. Hey, Katie, can you do blah, blah, blah? Is that okay? I mean, yes, that actually is my job. It's totally okay.
That's what I've been doing the whole time. You just weren't aware of it. So now that you're aware of it,
yeah,
we're going to really rock and roll now. It's amazing. So what do you wish teachers knew about working with and collaborating with librarians?
Okay, so it depends. Again, I keep coming back to that just because everyone's different. I like collaboration is my most favorite part of my job. I don't know if you can say most favorite, but it's definitely my favorite part of my job. So we won't talk about how long it's been since I did an official inventory.
They're all there. The books are all on the shelf. We're fine. We're good.
Well, or not. And okay, we'll find out. But no, that librarians care about them. You talked earlier about having those conversations. I am very intentional about having conversations that have absolutely nothing to do with education, because being a support for my teachers includes getting to know them. So it does take some time, but that's, the greatest gift you can give anyone. And with this COVID, I've missed connecting with people. So I'm using the phone for like the thing everyone forgot about, and like making a legitimate phone call and hearing the other person's voice. And my teachers I worked with the most, I did start with them because, they've got a bigger spot in my heart than the ones that haven't like embraced working with me just yet, but we'll get them too. So I go down my list and I just call them up on their prep or after school and have a check-in conversation. And sometimes it leads to an activity we need to collaborate on, but it's only them bringing it up. Or if they express that something that's coming up is stressful for them, then I go ahead and offer to take it off their plate. But just being that human for them.
I've often told teachers that I know the idea of like a wellness rooms and these kind of places for kids and for students to kind of go and calm down and find some peace and a chance to kind of, again, relax and refocus is a big thing right now. And I've seen a lot of things online. Well, where's the teacher's wellness room? Where's the teacher's spot? And I've always told my teachers, your wellness room is the library. If you need anything, you come up and you come find me. Come on up. I can hide you out for a few minutes if you need a few minutes quiet. I got lots of big closets and storage. We can pop you in one of those. I got chocolate. We can have what you need. Make sure I'm fully stocked with chocolate and with treats. You come up, and I feel like sometimes I'm a bit of a therapist because we're just talking and we're trying to help. I'm trying to help calm them so they don't feel overly stressed and overly excited, because we don't want that. We don't want them to feel that burden. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to do is, like you were saying, help them to know that somebody cares about them more than just, hey, I'm your librarian, you're teaching, how do I help you teach? No, I'm more than that. I want to make sure that you as a person are seen and heard and understood. And I think it's important for all of us, regardless of what position we're in, to remember that we are people first, and then whatever educational role second. And frankly, they should be blending, but we can't forget that the two are separate, actually. So I love your points there.
Yeah, that's what makes those conversations so critical, because you don't know when that teacher is going to need you. And if I don't take that time, like the beginning of the year, I love new teachers. I hit them rolling first. Like, okay, this is what we do at my school. We all work with a librarian. Like, they have no chance to figure out they don't have to. They can get out.
Oh, yeah.
But having those conversations intentionally with my new teachers right at the beginning just makes it so when something does happen, they know where they can go. Because think about, like, any campus, where does a person have to go? You know, even if they have a staff room, if that staff room is across the hall from the principal's office, no, that's not where they want to escape to. I had an instance last year, a teacher just came to me in tears, and I pivoted on the moment, but I was really bothered that something had happened that was that traumatic during the middle of the school year. This is not at the end yet. So she still had like another class she had to go teach. But, you know, she chose to come to me, and before I even knew what was wrong, there was a bit of me that's like, oh my gosh, I am so grateful that I did something right that made her feel it was okay to come to me, that whatever was coming next, I would be able to help her teach the rest of her courses that day.
I actually had a teacher, a good friend of mine who I was working with, and she sent me a text message last year one day that said, can you come to my room right now? And as I got there, she was in the hallway, literally in tears, and said, I can't. And she just left. And I'm like, okay. Walked right in and took care of what needed to be taken care of. And she came back by the next period, but she just had to get out and get away. Some things were going on. And it was like, again, I felt, wow, what an honor that's who she called. She called me to come in and help her and assist her, not because I'm amazing or magnificent or this or that, although I'm pretty amazing. But she recognized and said, you know what? I trust you that you can help me, and that you're going to do what I need to do. No questions were ever asked. There was no need for, I didn't ever require an explanation other than, are you okay now? Do you need to stay longer? But she literally was just gone for like 20 minutes, came back by the next class and was totally fine. She just had to get away from the situation. And isn't that what we want all of our kids to be learning, is that if you're in a situation you can't function in, find a safe way to escape it, recenter yourself, and then go back and take care of business. And that's exactly what she did. And I loved that she trusted me enough to do that. So powerful.
Yes.
So I can't end an interview with a librarian without asking a couple of questions about books. And I know this is one of those things that may be the hardest questions that I ask, but I've got two questions for you. And I'm not going to be super tight on the number, but if you had to pick your favorite educational book or books, what would they be for right now?
Right, that's really hard for right now. I actually just reconnected, though, with Laura Robb. She is the author of, oh gosh, I messed up the title, Teaching Reading in Middle Grade. I'm pulling it up right now because I want to be right. Yeah, it's like, okay, like I'm doing this. Okay, I'm typing this right now. Okay, Teaching Reading in Middle School. I read that book earlier in my career, and it totally changed my teaching trajectory, like everything. I even have a reading specialist credential, so I have tons and tons of books on reading. But this was the like most powerful book. The way it's written with the examples, just amazing. So I've been presenting since like my second year of teaching, which probably shouldn't have happened, but I was tapped to start helping teachers. And every time I would present, like, you have to have this book. There is no two ways about it. And I would say it still holds true even today. It has examples of how you really do reciprocal teaching. And if you're not familiar with that, it's the kids really digging in and having discussions about what they're reading based on 4 main reading strategies. So that was also so powerful to me with the background of the reading specialist credential of talking about, gazillion reading strategies. Like, oh my gosh, no, we don't need a gazillion. 4, you master these 4, you're golden. Like, oh my gosh, yes, I could teach anyone just 4 strategies. It was like a big epiphany moment of how much easier teaching reading could be. And then when I was doing the teaching, like she brings up in this book, it was like, oh my goodness, watching the kids soar and like really grasp those strategies and seeing their reading ability skyrocket was just amazing.
That is not one I'm familiar with.
It's an older book.
School,
it was published in 2000, but I was teaching pre-2000, but we won't say how much before that. But yes.
That's all right. That's all right. You know what? I will definitely look into this one and see if my teachers are aware, because it sounds amazing, Yeah. And she's got other books as well. I'm just looking. I'm on Amazon. I'm seeing some other things as well.
She has a new book coming out too. She's writing it right now, and yeah, I'm excited about that as well. But
okay, so last question. What is a favorite entertainment book and or genre?
Okay.
So when you eat entertainment, what are you going to pick?
I was not ready for this question.
I snuck that one in. I'm sorry.
You totally did. This is always the hardest one for me because I get to read so many more books now because of audiobooks. Oh my gosh, they are just the most amazing thing in the world. Well, I'm a super, super slow reader and I cannot sit still for anything. So getting an English degree was a really horrible experience, especially my Victoria Lit class. I hated that because those books are super fat. You got paid by the word.
Yes, you did.
Who cares crossing the street? But at any rate, I recently devoured Grown and People Like Us, and both of those are amazing, and they're different types of amazing. Grown is realistic by Tiffany Jackson and dealing with rape culture and all kinds of horrific things that a young Black girl does experience. It's not like in your face, so it's just written very, very magically. And the girl that did the audio for it was phenomenal. I was really blessed to get to listen to that early on.
And Grown is a newer book, right? That was like just recently, yes. September, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
September 18th.
Yeah.
But I got on that sucker. But like anything Tiffany Jackson, I love. But I really have been impressed with realistic fiction's turn the past few years. It's definitely not like it was when we were going to school. Realistic fiction, I would just never, ever pick up. But this book and the new David Espinosa, have you read that one?
I'm not sure. Which one is that one?
Okay. The new David Espinosa by Fred Aceves.
No.
So this is YA. That's where I live. He is frustrated with his size. He's a very lanky individual, and he winds up getting slapped. But because of his lack of strength and size, it makes him like fall and pass out. And a kid takes a video of it, and it goes viral. So he is really, really frustrated and decides that he's going to change all this. And he does a little bit of research, not the way that we would tell a kid to research, because his research told him that over summer he could like gain 25 pounds of muscle. And that's what he sets forth to do. And when he finds out that he can't quite do it naturally, he makes some not so great choices. And so it deals with the path of his life with those choices.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I've seen that. I've seen the cover. I've now seen that. And I definitely have seen the cover. I have not read it, but it is on my Goodreads list. So yes, I'll bump that a little higher.
Definitely need to read it because it's cautionary, but not preachy. So I love that combination.
Awesome.
But my genre, and my genre has to be steampunk. I am really loving what steampunk's doing.
That's awesome. That's amazing. It's a fun, for those who aren't familiar with what steampunk is, quick little synopsis for any teachers that are not familiar with that.
So it's like if what happened in the future happened in the past. But that's a really small synopsis. So you've got this futuristic technology taking place in the past, like Victorian or medieval time period.
Yeah.
So just that dichotomy is really neat. Usually you've got really strong characters, whether they're male or female, and they're working on doing some really good stuff on top of just this weird sci-fi dystopia mess of environment. But it doesn't take that long to set the stage, I've noticed. They get like right into the crazy world that they've created and start doing some things with it. Cinder, people have read that one. That's one of my top steampunk books.
Yeah, Cinder's great. That whole series is fantastic. It's a great series. So.
Yes.
Well, I know this part could last forever and ever, but I'm going to stop us with this and just say, I think it's important though that this was an important part of what I wanted to make sure to cover, because we are in the middle of crazy times, folks. Teachers, you need to find something that will help you to kind of recharge. And for many teachers, I do know they like to read, but yet we're beating ourselves up and not finding that time. Take some time to read, whether it's a paper book or whether it's an audio book, whatever the format, it doesn't matter. I really bothers when people say, oh, audiobooks aren't reading. Oh, graphic novels aren't reading. Oh, no. If it's a book and you're reading it, it's reading, regardless of what you're doing. If you're reading, it is reading. There's so many different genres and formats of reading. Who cares what the format or genre is? It's the act of reading. Active listening while you're doing an audiobook is fantastic. And so find something that will help you. And if you're a reader, or if you'd like to be a reader, these are a couple of suggestions that could be helpful, could be beneficial, and we'll make sure we've got links here. But take time for you so that you can rejuvenate and kind of make sure you're where you need to be.
Right. Bibliotherapy is real, and it depends on what you need in that moment. I was listening to On the Come Up at the gym, and just the beat of her book, it was able to just lift a little bit heavier that day. But some mornings it's like I'm moving kind of slow. So I've got my hot chocolate and my book and I'm reading the print, or I'm like, man, I just got to pound the pavement. I've got an audiobook going. So it's also what I need in that moment, but there's a book there that's going to help me get through it.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Well, Katie, thank you so much for giving some time. I know we went a little longer than we planned, but I think it's so important that we covered these things, because we have to realize that the librarian can be and should be an integral part of the teaching and the academics in any school. And whether that is maybe they're more comfortable just helping you find support materials or resources, or whether it's coming in and actually doing some teaching and working with you on that full collaborative planning. Work with them however they feel comfortable and you feel comfortable. And what you may find is the more you work together, the more comfortable you're going to both feel, and the more likely you are going to feel that you can take those risks and really kind of push what needs to be going on. So I love it. Thank you for all that you do. Tell people where they can find you, because they're going to want to follow you. They're going to want to connect with you online. How are they going to find you?
Well, let me throw out a cautionary tale to teachers. So there is, I guess, a slight danger if you get super comfortable with your librarian, because, well, it depends. Yeah. If your librarian is kind of like me, which a lot of us are, we're a little on that crazy side. So the teachers that I'm super close to, I don't just talk to them hey, can I do this? I'll sometimes just go across the hall, open their door when they have a class going on. And I'm not being rude. I'm not interrupting their instruction, but so that the students can hear me, hey, I have an idea. Can I use your class? And the students are all cheering. Yeah, I want to do whatever she wants us to do, before the teacher has even had a chance to say yes or no. So I get the kids on my side too right away.
Which is not a bad thing. I think that's one of the best parts of being a librarian, is getting able to do that and kind of go in there. I run a book club at my school, and tomorrow, as we are recording this, tomorrow is our book club day. And I walked by a teacher's room, because we're face to face in masks and face coverings. And and I walked by a teacher's room and said, "Don't forget tomorrow's book club." And he's like, "Oh, great. Way to take my fun and my excitement." I was so excited to tell him about it. I said, "Well, I live to take your energy and your happiness." And the kids looked at me like all funny. And he's like, "It's true. I mean, what can we say? We just cause problems." And it was just a fun little moment. But you're right. I mean, a lot of librarians, I think a lot of those, especially the newer ones coming in, I think we tend to have that little bit of a semi-crazy moment, right? We're not afraid to get out there and kind of do some fun stuff. So reach out to your librarian and let's see how they can help you get through this crazy. But don't forget, once we come back into buildings full on, that help does not need to stop. And in fact, it can probably pick up to the next level at that point. So.
Oh, definitely. So yeah, reaching out with me. I'm really active on Twitter. I like sharing and learning and growing in that space as well. I just put out a really cool interactive reading journal. And if you didn't see it and don't want to scroll, you can just reach out to me and ask me for it and poof, you've got it. But I'm at Katie J. McNamara. McNamara is McNamara, all A's.
Yeah, we'll have all that in the show notes as well. So it'd be a quick direct link over. But yes, you're going to want to find Katie online. She's a lot of fun, a lot of great ideas, and do connect with her because she will respond back, and she's not one of the people that will just from a distance, like, yes, kind of here's a heart to like what you're saying. No, she'll actually reach out and say, okay, how about this? What about this? And so lots of fun.
It's just paying it forward because librarians, we don't know everything, but we have to know how to get to know everything, So I've definitely reached out and asked tons of people for help, and no one has ever told me no. So I'm definitely not going to tell anyone else no.
Yeah.
Like there's this responsibility. All the kids are all our kids.
Exactly. Whether they're in your building or down the street or across the state, across the country, across the globe. If any teacher comes and asks, that's kind of my thing. If I can help, I will help. And if not, if I know someone who can help, I will make the introduction so that they can make that possibly happen. So perfect. Well, thank you again, Katie. I appreciate you being here. And everybody, stick around. We've got a House of Ed Tech recommendation. We're going to see if we can tap Katie for that one. So we will be right back.
Ooh.
Okay, and we are back with Katie McNamara. She's going to give us our Ed Tech recommendation for the week. And not only one, I think she's even got a twofer here. So, Katie, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, it's just really hard for me to stop at one with anything. So during this whole COVID bit, I have fallen like head over heels in love with Pear Deck. So if you're a Team Nearpod, I still appreciate you. Nothing against that. Just my district bought Pear Deck. So that's what we're rocking. Honestly, I don't know if I should say this if my admin finds it, but I never used Pear Deck before, even though they had purchased it. So I was like, oh, that's nice. But I was like, I don't need a slide deck for me to know what my kids are doing because I just walk around like crazy. It's real easy for me to get 10,000 steps in a day, but I can't like walk around and see what everyone's doing through the computers. So Pear Deck is just super fabulous to see where my students are, exactly how they're doing, and getting all those little interactive check-ins with them. And I love I call it catch, release, catch. So we start all together, this like teacher-driven slide deck, and I'm working it through with them. And then I have them work independently because I can shift it to student mode. And then after whatever time I feel is appropriate, based on like what Pear Deck is telling me with how they're moving along the slide deck, then I'll go ahead and pull them back to teacher-driven and wrap things up.
So that right there was like a double, and I think I don't think you were counting that as a double, but I feel like that was a double whammy right there. Pear Deck in general, but then that idea of all together, you're on your own, and I got your back. So you said catch, release, catch. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, that's what I call it. Maybe I should trademark it.
I like that. That's amazing. But really, I mean, honestly, Pear Deck is a great tool for letting you do that. That's a great idea. My district is also a Pear Deck district, and in all honesty, I haven't used it a whole lot. But I need to jump in there more myself because it is a powerful tool.
Yeah, I will not do another lesson virtually without Pear Deck. it just is not happening. You can connect anything. Even I was doing Costa's level of questions with an Avid class, and we went to Jamboard and an interactive slide deck, and I still had all of those pieces embedded in the Pear Deck.
You can literally do everything, and it is amazing. So yes, awesome. So Pear Deck with the extra catch, release, catch approach. Okay, so what's your second one, Katie?
Okay, my second big ed tech tool, it's your telephone for making phone calls. So pause, get away from the screen, get away from the couch, whatever, call another teacher friend and go for a walk and make them go for a walk with you too. At the same time, doesn't matter if it's a few steps, a lot of steps, but go and just get some fresh air, get some exercise, get some adult conversation with someone in education.
I love that one because I've always been the kind of person that if I've got to have a conversation with someone, I would much rather pick up a phone and call than have 40 texts back and forth or a dozen emails. I'd rather just pick up the phone and have a 5-minute conversation, get everything out, and then send the email afterwards and say, okay, here's what we talked about, making sure everything's clear. The clarification email after is great, but the work it out on a phone, I think, is amazing. So yes, that's a great recommendation. I love that.
And if I'm going to have a one-on-one conversation, we don't need another virtual meeting. Do that walk. And then, like you said, follow up with an email. Hey, here's what we discussed. So then there's like record, or if you need those notes for a later follow-up.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that, Katie. That's a perfect idea. Thank you so much for sharing that one. Really love that one. That's absolutely great, honestly. So Pear Deck, catch, release, catch, and then also your phone, the phone app. Make a phone call. I love it. So perfect. And I like that you not just said make a phone call, but you said go out and walk while you do it. Move around a little bit.
Yeah.
So good for us all the time, but especially right now. So Katie, thank you so much for being on the guest and also the EdTech recommender for House of EdTech. Again, tell everybody where they can find you just in case they didn't listen the first time. One more time, where can they find you online?
So wait, people didn't listen the first time? Oh my goodness. All right. So you can find me at Katie J. McNamara on Twitter.
Perfect. And folks, don't be afraid to reach out to her. She's amazing to reach out and communicate with and collaborate with. So Katie, again, thank you for being here. It was so much fun chatting with you. We'll definitely have to set up something in the future to chat again and continue some of this awesome discussion.
Yeah, sounds great.
Congratulations to this episode's House of EdTech VIP, Chris Nesi at Mr. Nesi Online. Chris is a social studies teacher in New Jersey, a college professor, a husband and a father, and one of the best guys you could ever meet. Oh, and he also hosts a little podcast called The House of EdTech. Wait a second. We all know this guy. We all know and love Chris, and because this is his show, he would never make himself the VIP. But guess what? I'm still the substitute host for this last episode. So I'm going to go and do what I'm going to do. Chris is the host of this very podcast, The House of EdTech, co-host of Podcast PD with Stacy Lindes and AJ Bianco, and he has just recently started a new podcast with AJ called The Chase for 28 that is all about baseball and especially the New York Yankees. He's the founder of the Education Podcast Network and has helped many, many, many people get started in podcasting. Chris also does a lot of producing of other podcasts. The man eats, drinks, sleeps, breathes, everything podcasting. But Chris is also never afraid to try new things, even if he knows he might fall on his face. But you know what? That's one of the most amazing attributes and characteristics about him. I've actually met Chris in 3D, and we hung out and broke bread together. We had a meal. Stacy Lindes was there with us. And you know what? It was a fabulous evening. I absolutely loved it. Now, if for some strange reason you aren't following Chris online, fix it now. He's at Mr. Nesi on Twitter, And you can also follow the show at House of Ed Tech, also on Twitter. Thanks for the support, Chris. Thanks for putting up with my lack of schedule and for being an incredible friend. I hope you've been able to use this time where you had your substitute take this personal leave and make the most of it. I know you have, because I've seen the amazing stuff you're constantly doing. Well, congratulations again to Chris, as you are this episode's House of Ed Tech VIP. Thank you for checking out this episode of the House of Ed Tech, and thanks especially for sticking with me and the show as I've cut my teeth behind the mic as a substitute host. Let's keep the conversation going. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information and resources shared in this and every episode. For this episode, go to chrisnessy.com/169 and leave a comment, or send Chris a message by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter at Lars3EB. If you enjoy the House of Ed Tech podcast, there's a couple of things you can do. First, tell somebody about the podcast. If you share about it on social media, be sure to use the hashtag House of Ed Tech. This is one of the best ways to show your appreciation for a great show and for what Chris has created. It doesn't cost you a penny, but yet you can help spread the word and tell people about this excellent show. You can also become an awesome supporter and help Chris making sure the podcast continues. Many thanks to Chris's awesome supporters: Anthony Arnaud from the New Teacher podcast, Dan Gallagher, Carlos Garza, Mr. G from the Aced Tech podcast, Peggy George, Jeff Herb, Mike Messner, JP Presevento from the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast, Lori Simpson, and Kyle Wilcox. If you are interested in becoming a House of Ed Tech supporter, you can go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the House of Ed Tech, number 170, will be the annual Ed Tech App Smackdown. This episode will launch on December 20th, 2020. Now, this episode will also feature the full return of our very own Chris Nessy. Thanks again for letting me learn with you here on the podcast. And until next time, thank you for learning with me. And remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.